What have you done for me lately? Man, that happens way too often in our work. We do a good job. We think we've nailed it. Yeah, well, what's next? What are you going to do next? Let's talk about pipelines for sellers. It's important. And we're going to talk about it with Ken Guest next on Purpose Under Pressure. Welcome back. My name's Bryan, and this is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about developing sales and leadership success on purpose while under tremendous amounts of pressure sometimes. This show is brought to you by the professional sales and leadership training team at Sandler by the Ruby Group. You'll find them in Akron and in Columbus, Ohio. They're in Jacksonville, Florida. They're in Capital Region, New York. They'll come to you and do work where you are across this great country. And they do it on purpose. And I think that's key. That's why they're partners in this program, because this program is about staying on track, staying on purpose, no matter what kind of pressure rises. No shortcuts. Let's do things the right way. Let's do things on purpose for the long haul. Let's generate results. Let's generate revenue. But let's do it in a way that we were meant to do it and that we're going to be proud of. And that's what this show is all about. And that's what Sandler by the Ruby Group is all about. And so if you want that kind of a presence for you and your sales team and your organization, go ahead and reach out. You can find them online at therubygroup.sandler.com. The Ruby Group, coaching leaders to win when the stakes are high. So let's get cooking. I've always called it, you can ask my family, I always talk about outrunning the bear. And what does that mean? It means today I'm fine. I'm ahead of the bear. But as a salesperson, I was always afraid of what tomorrow looked like. Folks, when you're on commission, when you eat what you kill and only eat what you kill, and you worry about going hungry, you just do. You worry about what if this deal doesn't come through, and what if that client changes suppliers, and what if no one ever wants to buy anything from me again? You worry about it, and it ruins you. It can. And so I want to talk about pipelines, because when I understood more about pipelines and making sure you always had someone else to talk to, making sure you had somebody who's next, if you will, it changed things. I want to do that with Ken Guest. He's a partner and a trainer at Sandler by the Ruby Group. Ken, welcome to this program. We're so glad you're on Purpose Under Pressure.
Thanks for having me, Bryan. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
I'm glad you're here because I know you know what you're talking about when it comes to pipelines. And I know that not all deals are good deals. And we like to say, sometimes the best deals are the ones you say no to. But as a salesperson, we want to say yes to them all because we don't know when the next one's coming. Is that accurate? Is that fair to say?
Oh, I think that's fair to say with salespeople, because I think salespeople, they work really hard to prospect. They actually get a meeting. Somebody asks them to do a quote, maybe a little preliminarily, and they want to propose because they think they're one step closer to getting a deal. And then they say, well, that's in my pipeline now because I did a quote. As opposed to maybe we take a step back, ask a few more questions, and make sure this is a deal that we even want. As you just said, maybe sometimes the best ones are the ones you walk away from. So I think salespeople get excited about quoting, and I always tell them, stop getting excited about quoting. It's time to get inquisitive and find out, does this make sense for us to quote?
So maybe that's why it feels so unstable, because even if my pipeline looks full to me, it might not actually be full. Like there's a difference between, some people don't have a pipeline at all. They're just winging it, right, Ken? They have no idea where they're going next. But even if we have a pipeline, we've got 5 prospects on the line, we might not have any. How do you develop a healthy pipeline so that you know that these next prospects that you're talking to are, qualified in some way?
Well, I think it starts with, as I mentioned, the questions you ask when you're on the meeting before you decide to quote. That's where it starts. My colleague Jordan Mullett on our team, he likes to use the phrase "have a clean pipeline," and the definition of clean pipeline is everything in there is a legitimate opportunity. There's different lenses we use that I think one of my peers might have mentioned not too long ago. Different lenses we use when we look at pipeline, and it can be a lens of, do I have a next meeting scheduled with the buyer? Because if I do, that's an indicator that this is legit. If I can't get a next meeting, then maybe that's not as legitimate. Did I identify what the client's issues or challenges were that they wanted my help with? Did I do a good job of identifying that? That's another good lens or filter to look at in determining, is this real? Is this something that maybe I need to get it out of my pipeline because I've followed up a few times and they've kind of went in the witness protection program and I can't hear from them, So you start to look at your pipeline through some of these different filters, and it makes you realize, okay, what's legitimate and what's not. I always tell salespeople, I'd rather have 5 things in my pipeline that I have a next step on all of them. I know exactly what we're doing next. It feels legitimate. They've shared the emotional reason they might want to pick me, rather than 25 that you don't really know.
How does a pipeline get full? Because you're talking about quality, and sometimes you need quantity to get to the quality. And so those don't just happen. How do we make a pipeline full so that we can kind of feel like we're outrunning that bear?
Well, the quantity, you don't want a quantity of pipeline, as you said, but what you do want is a quantity of activity. And if I do the activity, and the activity needs to be quality as well. So when I do the activity meaning the prospecting activity, the reach outs. And no matter what your world is, everybody's different. There's people I know that their prospecting activity is attending a lot of networking events and they have a lot of success with that. Okay, go do that and make them high quality networking events with good lead opportunities. Don't just go to one, but in some people it's old school cold calling, and some people it's asking for introductions. But there's a series of activities that we know as sales people that if we do those activities should generate opportunities, should generate meetings that then generate healthy opportunities that go in our pipeline. But it all starts at the behavioral level. We have a term we like to use called a cookbook. The cookbook is nothing more than what is that recipe or mix of activities that if I do that should make me successful, should fill my pipeline, give of legitimate opportunities, and give me an opportunity to win business at the end of the day, because that's what it's about.
How do I know? So I can write anything on that cookbook I want, right? I can say I'm going to talk to 14 people this week, whatever the activity is. What if it needed to be 15? What if it needed to be 3? How do I know that my activity is quality activity?
Well, it's real simple. So is the activity you're doing generating the results you want? And if we tell people, it seems simple, but we tell people all the time, every 90 days, measure your activity, keep track of your activity, know whether you did 14 or 15, as you said. And at the end of the day, every month, take a look and say, did it put in the pipeline what I wanted it to? Did that level of activity work? And, Mike Jones, our CEO, says all the time, the number one reason to track your activities, everybody thinks it's to have accountability or to keep us on track, to make it about behaviors and not results, because that takes a lot of the ego pressure. And like you talked about at the beginning, the pressure of I got to close business to make my house payment or whatever. And he said, no, that's not the reason. The reason is to drive sales. The end of the day is to make more sales. So let's do our activity. We always say track it by the month, analyze what you do, because it's one thing, I'll work with companies and we'll get them tracking behaviors, which is scary because there's accountability to that. That's the scary part.
Scary for the seller?
Scary for the seller.
Because someone's looking over their shoulder, right?
Yes. I mean, I legitimately, it's been many years ago, I legitimately had a company several years ago that told me they would only track their behaviors and show it to me because we're not going to show it to our boss. And I said, why wouldn't you show it to your boss? And they said, because no matter what we did, he would change it. He would tell us it's wrong. And so then I went to the leader and I said, I have them holding themselves accountable activities. And sure enough, he said, let me see it. And I said, no. I said, because they told me. He said, why? I said, because they told me that you would change it. And he laughed and he said, they're probably right. So I said, give me 3 months of doing it with them, getting them comfortable with the amount of activity they're doing is the right amount of activity to produce the results that you're looking for and they're looking for, and then I'll show it to you. And he said, fine. So it's scary when they start to do these activities and track it, but there's no point in tracking it unless you're going to analyze the results and say, did that get me what I wanted? So now we got to start taking it to the next level. As a seller, we have to look at our own activity and say, did it get me the results I want? If it didn't, we got to pivot.
And so leaders have a sales team, And all they can tell is if these steps are in place, if the pipeline's in place, if the cookbook's in place, then they've got a bunch of numbers. How can a leader help a salesperson be a healthy salesperson with a healthy pipeline?
So I always look at this. I always look at it this way. From a seller standpoint, the first thing I want you to monitor is your behaviors, not your results. And there's several reasons for that, right? There's emotional reasons, such as the pressure that we put on ourselves when we're not hitting our number, especially if we're on commission. But if I can say I can go home on Friday and said I did my behaviors, I did my activities, the results should be there over time, then that's a gratifying feeling for a seller. So I always tell sellers the first thing you want to look at is your behaviors. Then the second thing you want to look at is your pipeline. The third thing you then want to look at is the results that you achieve.
The sales.
Did I have the success? Did I hit my sales goal? Essentially. Now let's look at it from the leader's side. I want them to look at it the opposite. So what I want them to do is I want them to first look at Ken's sales goal was X and he's at Y. He's either on track for his annual goal or he's not.
Doesn't matter what they did. Did you hit the number or didn't you? Okay.
That's right. So if they are, I leave Ken alone. He's doing great. Okay. I coach him, I support him. I'm there to help improve, but he's hitting the goal that we set, that we agreed on in January for this year. He's on track. Great. Leave him be. If Ken's on track for his sales goal or not on track for his sales goal, but then I look at his pipeline second, and his pipeline is healthy. It's full and it's healthy. If it's not, now we look at the behavior as a leader and say, unfortunately, you're on pace to hit your sales goal, but there's a gap there in the next 7 months. You know, you look like you're on track, but what's in your pipeline isn't going to be enough for you to hit your number. So now we got to look at it. We reverse it as a leader. So there's
I love that.
You know, you get to the behavior, and I've had a conversation with somebody recently. Looks like you're off to a great start, but there's not a whole lot in your pipeline, yet you've been doing all the behaviors that you agreed to do. So guess what has to happen? Unfortunately, the behaviors have to change. Even though you've been doing what's expected, the number's not, the gap is too big. And then as a leader, the other thing you want to do is go back to this idea of looking at certain triggers or filters in a pipeline. So when I look at a team's pipeline, the trigger or filters I'm looking at is, hey, do you have a next meeting scheduled with that potential buyer? Because if you do, I'm going to count that one as a legitimate opportunity. If you don't, you can't get a hold of them, they're not returning your call, maybe we should take that to a no and get it out of the pipeline because it's not real clean in there.
What's the biggest mistake a leader can make on the other side if they don't follow that top-down mentality where they're looking at sales first, followed by pipeline, followed by objectives? What's the biggest mistake they can make that can kind of sour the relationship between them and their salesperson?
Well, I think if they have a team of salespeople and if there is an annual sales goal for the company and there is somebody that is nailing it, they're hitting their number, but there's other team members that aren't. I've seen it happen time and time again. They go to their superstar and they say, I know you're hitting your sales goal. It's not enough though.
I need more.
I need more. Now,
so they say you're hitting your number, but I need more work.
Yeah.
Man, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah. Now,
especially
I can
with
go
sellers.
to you, Bryan, as a seller, and I can say, Bryan, your gap's pretty big with what's in your pipeline versus what we're hoping to sell by the end of the year. You're doing your behaviors. What do you think needs to change, Bryan? And I use this, I always tell people when they have to make changes to their behavior plan, they should always do it through 3 words. They should look at their cookbook or their behavior plan through 3 words. And the 3 words are more, better, and different. So when you look at the activity you're doing, what am I doing that's really working? And I should probably do more of that, maybe less of something else. And, or What's an activity that I know it's the right activity? I know the other people on the team are killing it with that activity, but I can't seem to get something going. So I always tell people when you're looking at that behavior, more, better, and different is how we make decisions.
Folks, I think when it comes to sales, I think sellers are doing the best they can. And they have what they have, and they have the tools available to what they have, and they may or may not be trained, but we're all trying. Salespeople are typically trying hard, and they may not know what to do next, but they're trying. I think the real value comes when leaders reach out and find some sales training, find some help. When a leader gets better, the sales team gets better. Do you agree with that, Ken? And if so, how would somebody get in touch with you if they needed to learn more about this?
I do agree with that. And I think as a leader, one of the best pieces of advice I got a long time ago from a mentor of mine is when you're leading others, when you have something positive to say about them, make sure you are saying positive things about them, make it about the person. When you have something negative to say about the person, make it about the activity. So if you're struggling to hit your behavioral numbers, it's not that you're a bad person, just what can we do different? So having that mindset. And if somebody wants to learn more about that, they can always get a hold of us. They can go to our website. And as you mentioned earlier, they can reach out to me through LinkedIn or any of my colleagues at the Ruby Group. We'd be happy to help and give them some guidance on that.
And I hope you do. I think we hear Sandler by the Ruby Group. We think I think sales training, but there's just so much more available for leadership as well. And leadership isn't just about sales. I know you guys help with a lot of those different things as well. So if you're a leader and you want to be better at whatever, whether it's personal, whether it's business, your organization, reach out to these folks. I think you're going to be better off when you do. Ken, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Bryan. Always good to see you.
That's Ken Guest. He's partner and trainer with Sandler by the Ruby Group. One of the good guys. He talks a little bit about the cookbook in there. And one of the things that I always tell people, I heard this from Ken Guest. He said, you don't have to like it. You just have to do it. And I don't know if that's Ken's line or not, but I attribute it to him because I think it's real. And it's not just in sales. It's in anything in life. If it's going to move the needle, do the work. Folks, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We do this every week, sometimes multiple times a week. If you're subscribed, you'll get a little notification in your box that says, hey, there's a new show and you should listen or watch. Also tell a friend, let them know about the show too. We appreciate it. It helps them to be on purpose, and that's never a bad thing. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at bryanmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. It's brought to you by the Ruby Group, coaching leaders to win when the stakes are high. Until next time, no matter how high the pressure gets, stay on purpose.